Thousands of people this weekend will be marching and protesting about nuclear weapons. And like you and me, they are heartily sick of the failure of governments to secure a reduction, let alone the elimination of nuclear weapons. And we all know the scientific opinion which tells us that if even a fraction of these weapons were used, there would be total destruction of humanity. Nuclear weapons reach the parts which other weapons don't. That means you and I. And what are our government doing about it? They're making sanctimonious pronouncements about their belief in disarmament, yet rushing out and getting Cruise and Trident weapons to increase the killing capacity of this country. Why? Why do we need them? Well, they say it's an insurance policy. It's just in case. If it's such a good insurance policy, why doesn't the government believe that every country should have them and there'll be no war? But even our government, ludicrous as it is, wouldn't advocate such a policy. And if I offered you an insurance policy for personal injury, which said that in the event that you broke a leg, the payout would be you got killed, would you buy it? I don't think you would. But I have news for you. That's precisely the type of insurance this government's buying for you. The premium is £10,000 million. The policy is called Trident, and it's wasteful. I don't know what £10,000 million looks like, but I guarantee you there are people with leaks in their roofs in their houses who are waiting on their kids to get a decent education, with schools that need money, could spend that money rather better. And at the same time as all this is going on, the government is pretending they don't know what the target areas may be. For instance, the base here may not be a target. I don't believe it. Do you? Well, Mr. Heseltine, if you'd like to debate these issues, give us a call. I'm sure the security services will provide the telephone number. Meanwhile, enjoy the view. It may not last, but then again, we may not either.
Finally, of course, there is the feeling of all the people in the area. There's a very, very large majority who are hostile to it, and I think it does a disservice to the cause which it claims to represent, namely unilateral nuclear disarmament.
To what extent, though, is that really true? Because the campers and Councillor Robertson, who supports them, they argue that they, in fact, have a great deal of popular support.
Well, if you go back to 1984, the last district election, the councillors here, the local councillor for the area of Faslane had a record majority standing as an anti-peace camp independent. I in Central Helensburgh doubled my majority on the same campaign, though I stood with a party label as Conservative.
What you neglected to say was that of all the parties that were standing in the election, Labour, SNP, SDP and Liberal, there was a bigger majority voted for parties who were against Trident than there were for parties pro-Trident, and those figures are inescapable.
Councillor Glenn says that a vote against Trident doesn't necessarily mean support for the peace camp. But whichever view of the voting figures you favour, the ratepayers of Shandon are adamant. They're being denied their local democratic rights.
I mean, 3.5 years of cutting fences, blockading roads, spray painting the sea walls, private houses, ordinary walls in the countryside and the surrounding area. It hasn't achieved their aims of banning nuclear weapons, so it seems a foolish exercise to continue along the path that they're doing. All they're doing is alienating themselves from people who perhaps would have offered them support initially.
No, it's very, very dirty, very unsightly and really quite unnecessary.
Faslane is where the Navy base is. I think it starts from the road. This is Shandon, it's not Faslane. That has always been a bone of contention.
These aren't the same youngsters there all the time, 24 hours a day. You could admire the first group of people who came here, who did do that. But these people who are here now aren't real. I wouldn't say they were real part of the CND.
No, I don't think so. And I feel, you know, if they've got this strong enough cause, they should go down to the base gates every morning and harass the base. Not so much as us as residents.
The only time they seem to do anything is when they follow the people from the Greenham camp. They do something and they seem to think, oh, well, perhaps we should do something now.
Do you think you have to sit out here to protest against nuclear disarmament? Protest against nuclear activity? I mean, surely you can protest without... There's a political... this is supposed to be a democracy, and you can protest through the ballot box. All we're saying is that they're not making any, they're not doing anything to further their cause as far as we can see. They sit there, they get their national gyro checks in good time, and that's all they seem to be concerned with.
I do think they should move on and let other people get them now for a while.
To tell you the truth, I'm frightened to visit it. I'm frightened to walk my children round that way. I don't go near it. I keep as far away from it as possible.
Well, to begin with, they used chemical toilets, okay? And they assumed permission to dump their chemical waste in ground belonging to the school. And that was, we had to virtually stop our boys from the school going down that way. And obviously children used to go down there to play. The underpass was a suitable place. It was used partly as a urinal for part of the time. You know, they were in the early days before the actual flushing toilet was installed. I believe they have that now. And I'm not certain if things have improved all that much.
Peace Camp founder, now councillor, Les Robertson, is chairman of Dumbarton District's Environmental Health Committee, and he roundly dismisses allegations of squalor and filth around the camp.
Well, they're totally without foundation, is all. The allegations, most of the allegations that are made against the camp are totally without foundation. The Environmental Health Department of this Dumbarton District Council regularly inspect the camp and have found nothing untoward. Just as recently as just last month, Dr. Young from the Argyll and Clyde Health Board had a meeting with myself and the Director of Environmental Health, and he was quite happy with the situation and pointed out that the case of hepatitis was no more than old-fashioned jaundice and could be picked up by anybody, anywhere, even in your own household, for instance. So the allegations that the camp is insanitary are totally false.
Another local politician in sympathy with the Peace Camp has also defended its image. Writing in the book Diary of a Peace Camp, Councillor Ian MacDonald says, "We live in the village of Rue, about 3 miles from the camp, and have been associated with it since day one. What changes we have seen since then. From a small group of people sitting in the long grass under a blazing sun with one tent, to the present encampment of brightly painted caravans linked by neat gravel paths with flower beds, a vegetable plot and a well laid out information centre." His description scarcely accords with that of the ratepayers who condemn the camp's ill-kept, squalid appearance.
2 years have passed since I said that quote in the book, and I would say that probably it could do with a facelift to a certain extent. But I would also argue that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and I think that when people ask me questions like that, I always refer them to do they find Faslane Base, the submarine base itself, attractive? And I would ask anybody to say that that is good looking. So I think that whether it's good looking or not is not that important. But personally, I do find it attractive, especially in the summertime and when the sun's out.
How much sympathy, then, do you have for local ratepayers who don't find it attractive and don't find the method of protest that it represents attractive?
I have a fair degree of sympathy because obviously they are concerned that their environment is as nice looking as and attractive as possible. Now, I don't actually live here. It's not my personal type of protest, but I do admire the folk who do it, because I feel they get so frustrated they really want to show their physical anger against the way in which opinion in the nation as a whole is ignored over the questions of nuclear weapons. But I do think that they do represent quite a lot of people in the community, in the local community, as well as in the wider community. And I know many folk who actually do support the Peace Camp.
I think one thing that is upsetting is that people tend not to bring their complaints to us. There have been people at the school who have, say, somebody has dumped some wood at the bottom of the camp for us to use for firewood. They've come to us and said, could you please move it, because we can't see the bus coming, and the bus can't see us, so it doesn't pick us up. So we've moved it. That's perfectly reasonable, and that, you know, that's a policy of good neighbourliness. And we'd be quite happy for people to come and discuss with us what they see as being the most off-putting things about the camp, but they seem not inclined to do that.
The Peace Camp people argue that if things ever were as bad as their neighbours allege, they have certainly improved since. They also say their relationship with the established community is not so bad as publicity suggests, though they do admit to feeling misunderstood by some elements of that community. But it's a community to which the protesters say their camp offers several benefits.
Part of the reason that people abuse us so much is because we're giving them an opportunity to let loose their feelings that they've never been able to let loose about the base, because they've been too afraid to do so.
Compared to a place like Greenham or compared to where I was at Seneca, I found the local population very, very supportive, and the immediately local population, if not supportive, at least quite tolerant
Well, I've heard the allegation that the camp is an eyesore, and I think that has to be a matter of opinion, and everybody's got a different opinion as to what is an eyesore. I think this you could describe as an eyesore. This is a mock-up. It's pictures of 2- and 3-storey houses in West Clyde Street on the seafront at Helensburgh. And this grey area represents the size to scale of a shiplift that the MOD proposed to build in the Gairloch.
It's anything but a holiday camp. You know, this, I mean, to actually to live and survive here for the summertime, those who are disparaging and against the peace camp ought to come and spend a few days in winter time and just experience the savage wind that blows down the glen from the mountains up here.
I think it's safe to say that people who lodged this complaint probably haven't never visited the camp. If they had, they'd see that we have flushing toilets just like anybody else. We have a toilet caravan just over there. We have running water. We have the facilities to boil water so that we can wash up properly. And I can't see really what complaint they have in that way. I think it's just something from the slight shoddiness of some of the caravans, and it's an inclement climate here. The caravans take a heck of a beating. We're continually having to repair them. That takes a lot of time, and it's not the sort of work that shows outward results. I mean, if you look at some of the paintwork on the caravan that was painted with a mural just earlier this year, already it's peeling. And of course our resources are limited. We don't get that much money, despite what people might say about massive amounts coming from the council. We've had £50 this year from the council as a grant.
It's the ultimate in anti-sociality to want to kill people.
I think ideally we wouldn't be stuck here on the doorstep of the people who are working in St Andrew's School. We wouldn't have chosen this site. In fact, when the peace camp was first set up, it was further up in front of some MOD housing. And it was, I think, a local policeman who suggested this site. And they can thank him, whoever he was, for the fact that we're here now. I don't want to cause them any inconvenience. That's not the reason the camp's here. But we have to be somewhere. We have to have a base somewhere in this area. And this is the one that's been chosen for us.
People right in the immediate area might get a bit tired of our presence. I think that there's also a base down the road. And I think it's very unfortunate that people have become very accustomed to the presence of such a really terrible installation. And I think what's happened is that the image of militarism and the words of militarism have become very ordinary parts of people's vocabulary. And I think a great part of the great merit of there being the camp here is that it is so noticeable. And people become used to the idea of the word peace.
We did approach the local community council to have a public meeting with some of these local residents. The community council quashed it. They said, well, we'll have to be in control. We'll have to have our chairman sitting at the head of that. So any chance to resolve difficulties before they got out of hand was quashed by the community council.
Some residents of Dumbarton District do wholeheartedly support the camp, even though few of them seem to live in Shandon.
I think that there should be a camp here to show our objection to nuclear weapons in the area.